Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of NintendoFuse's Industry Talk. I'm your host, Barry, and joining me today, my fellow colleague, Steve.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Good to see you
A-
again, Barry.
Absolutely, always a pleasure. And our special guest of this episode, Dan Butchko, the CEO and founder of Playcrafting.
Hey, great to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you, too. Now, Dan, why don't you start off by telling just the viewers a little bit about yourself and about Playcrafting to start with?
Sure. So I run a company called Playcrafting. We started a few years back here in New York City. We're now also in Boston, San Francisco, and we've done some things here and there in LA and Seattle as well. Basically, what we did is we built a company in the service of game developers and those who are aspiring to become game developers, offering classes, courses all around how to make games, how to be part of the games business, all different aspects of how to make them, how to sell them, legal, voice acting, creating assets, software training, etc. But we also run a number of events in New York, Boston, and San Francisco as well, using them just really as a way to unite gamers and developers, and on our end, to help convert gamers into developers. That's sort of what we've been doing for the past few years, and things have just gotten so big in Boston and New York that we are now launching our first ever full-scale convention coming up in this August, 19th and 20th at Terminal 5 in Manhattan, taking that energy that we have at all of our smaller events that we've been doing for a number of years and really just kind of pushing it forward and inviting press, gamers, developers of all shapes and sizes to really show off local independent games that are being made.
No, that is phenomenal. I think we need more indie developers to get noticed because unfortunately a lot of them just go under the radar. So what can you tell us a little bit about this Play New York City event? What would a comer expect? Like if someone wanted to come to Play New York City, what would they expect to see?
Sure. So we are taking over all of Terminal 5. It's a really cool, pretty well-known rock venue. It's a concert venue in Manhattan. So it's 3 floors of expo space. So we're going to have booths and kiosks with games of all different shapes and sizes, mainly digital games. That's across console, PC, and mobile. But we also have a small but very passionate tabletop community. They'll be represented there as well for any tabletop fans out there. If you're a member of the industry yourself or you're making games, we do have talks and panels happening throughout the weekend too. That's only open for folks in the industry and also for press, bringing in a bunch of developers from both inside and outside New York. And it's just going to be a really fun weekend. We realize that New York itself does not have a dedicated games convention. That's why we're building it. It's in the service, like I said, of the local developers, but inviting people from outside of New York as well. From the folks that have signed up thus far, I can tell you it is majority indie games with a couple larger studios mixed in, mainly from New York, but a number of folks coming down from Boston and some international people coming in as well. So just going to be a really fun weekend. It's called Play NYC because it's all about the games. Every booth will be playable in some capacity. And we just want to basically convert that rock venue into a giant arcade for people to come through, play games. We've commissioned some pieces from local developers for what we're calling games graffiti. So we're going to have projected games throughout the venue. So as people are walking by, they get to play games that are projected onto walls. Talking to a few of our larger developers about actually using the stage at Terminal 5 for some really high-level, awesome content throughout the weekend. If you're a gamer, come by. If you're working in the industry, we'd love to have you. We're really building this from the ground up for the first year with the intention of it becoming something really big and ongoing in the years to come. And we're all gamers ourselves, so we want to make sure that this is primarily just a really fun event if you're going to be attending. And on the developer side, we want developers to use it to gain exposure to gamers themselves, as well as press and the larger industry. We want to use it as a way to put New York City and the Northeast on the map, as opposed to just having everybody have to go to the West Coast for these larger scale game-only events.
That's cool. So it's kind of like a for the gamers by the gamers sort of event, that sounds awesome. So the the developers that you're going to have there, are they going to be only connected with Playcrafting, or are others coming there as well?
Right. So we're looking at it as similar to what we do with our regular Playcrafting events. Those are come one, come all. They are completely open door policy in terms of developers. You don't have to have learned how to make games through Playcrafting to be a part of it. You don't have to be an instructor in one of our courses or anything like that. Of course, those people will be there. But because the events that we've just been running regularly in Boston and New York have gotten to such a size as they are, we've had a number of folks come through that are, just using the events as a way to get that kind of exposure. And for us, we like to use it as a way to bring the whole community together, not just Playcrafting folks.
Yeah, that's something, being from the New York metro area, I've always been puzzled that there's no convention for us here. The closest thing we have is New York Comic Con, which has very, very minimal gaming presence. And then, of course, there's PAX East up in Boston. But there's nothing in New York City, which to me just boggles my mind. So I'm very happy to see you guys doing this, and someone has to step up.
Yeah, and since this is the first year we're doing this event, it's definitely been a learning process. So I can see why a lot of folks have been sort of shied away from doing events like this. It's super expensive to do an event in Manhattan. There's a lot of logistical things you have to worry about, et cetera. But we kind of have seen this as just a challenge that's worth being overcome, because the events that we've been doing already in New York have been having up to 150 games and about 1,200 people coming through without them really being in super public or press or just industry-wide friendly spaces. So it's been very clear to us in just our regular Playcrafting programming in terms of events that this is the kind of event that New York really needs, and it's a problem that we really wanted to solve and take the lead on.
Well, thank you very much for all the gamers around here. I will say thank you. That is just absolutely awesome. Now, you mentioned that people will be able to play games. Will they all be PC? Like, what consoles are we talking about? Are we talking Switch? Will we have Switches there? Will we have PS4? Will we have Xbox Ones, 3DS, Vita? Like, what are we talking about in terms of consoles in addition to the mobile and PC?
Sure. So in terms of developers that are applying, for us, there's no restriction in terms of like the console or the platform that they're developing for. I can tell you that so far, out of the exhibitors we've confirmed to date, definitely a lot of PC folks, a lot of the independent developers in our community start out by putting their game onto Steam and then will port out to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. So there will be a number of games that either already are available on those consoles or will be coming to those consoles in the coming months. Again, in large part because a lot of the games are launching first on Steam and then they port them out. Haven't seen anything come through yet on the 3DS side, but we are talking to a couple of Vita developers. I've found that it's kind of similar to our tabletop developers in our community. It's a small but very passionate Vita crew in terms of both gamers and developers. So I could definitely see a few of those devs coming through as well. But yeah, really just across the board. New York and Boston in general just have a lot of mobile developers on there as well. So there will be a good number of iOS and Android developers too.
Now, I have to ask this because I am a physical collector. I absolutely love physical games, and I know this isn't, in terms of you, because it's by developer, per basis, pretty much. Have you thought about maybe bringing a company like Limited Run or Signature Edition games to this, or say, hey, come over here. There's a lot of indie games, and maybe these companies would like to put out physical versions, and like Limited Run, Signature Edition, companies like that, they actually help smaller developers get physical copies out.
Right. So far, in terms of like selling anything on site, we've been handling it just on like a developer to developer or publisher by publisher basis. So there will be devs themselves that are going to be bringing physical copies on site if they have indeed already been printed through companies like that. And we have been talking to a couple of companies that do publishing of physical games. And it sounds like maybe one or two of them are going to come through as well with their catalogs.
Oh, that's going to be fantastic, because We need more physical. Retail space. A lot of people think only shopping online. The retail space is so important, especially for those not gaming, to see that product.
Yeah, and I'm the same way too. I have an entire bookcase in my bedroom of every game I've ever owned, from like way back. I think it starts with GameCube because that's my personal favorite system of all time. Yeah, GameCube all the way up to present, and I treat it like a library. I love having the physical copy. So when people are telling me like, "Oh, there's discounts on the digital download," I'm like, "No, I need it in person. I need to be able to hold it and like physically put it into a space." Like, there's just something about that's just so gratifying to me, and being able to just pull them out of a bookshelf and like pop them into the system themselves is just, I think it's almost like a lost art at this point.
Sounds a lot like what Barry says on our podcast quite often. So.
Yeah. I'm on board.
Well, it's very true. I mean, you think about older generations, they had books. That was their form of entertainment. They would pull that out of their library, dedicate rooms to it. And our generation, games are the number one medium, or at least up there. So it's the same equivalent, pulling out that Super Smash Brothers Melee GameCube and popping it in. It has such a better feel than, oh, let me download it from the virtual console and boot it up. It's not the same.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Oh, that's good to hear. Now, hopefully some more developers. I know it's expensive. Hopefully they do that. Now, how has the response been? I mean, like you said, there's not any other show in New York City. There's a ton of developers here, and in Boston and the whole Northeast. Has it been really positive, or have people been like a little hesitant to come into New York?
Yeah, no. So I found the developer and the press / like larger industry response has been awesome so far. The first piece that we started to lock into place was bringing in press, local and from up and down the Eastern Seaboard. I think what I've realized along the way is that just like local developers, independent or part of larger studios in this area, gaming press is really hungry to go to something that's in their own backyard rather than having to go all the way to the West Coast. We purposely have this event happening a couple of weeks before PAX West so that any local press that are going out to it won't be affected by it. So the press response was immediately huge. We already have, I think it's about 100 different publications, websites, and different like streamers and podcasts, et cetera, that are going to be there on site at the event. That was really cool to see. And then having that list going into the real push for developers and publishers to come through for like to have like booth space was super helpful. So we already have, I think, about 40 booths and kiosks already taken for the event, and we're still about 2 months out. I'm spending literally all day, every day in phone calls because it's important to us to make sure that this event is extremely valuable to developers and we're getting their feedback throughout, making sure it's very clear exactly what's going to be happening at the event, how they can be involved in terms of both booth space and on the programming side with those talks and panels I mentioned. So I've been really, really encouraged by the media and the developer feedback thus far. In terms of general public, it looks like this is going to be similar to what all of our regular Playcrafting events has been in terms of like when the bulk of signups come in for ticket sales, because there's something about like the gaming crowd that we've seen with all the events that we do that like 80% of everybody that signs up in the last 3 days before the event. So since we're still like in game event years, I guess like 4 years out when it's really only 2 months, the real push has been to make sure we have all of our different promotional and media partners in place that we've had with our regular Playcrafting events, as well as bringing in some new ones, since this is like a blown up, much larger version of things that we've been doing in the past. So really that's just about casting the widest net, but it looks like we're still going to be on track to hit about 5,000 attendees altogether.
That's great.
Again, there's only so much like projecting that I can do.
Yeah.
It's very much a learning process, but it looks like that's where it's going to end up, which has us super excited.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember when several years ago when PAX first came to Boston, and I know like people were still hesitant in the area, like this new thing called PAX, and like they didn't realize it was going on for years over on the West Coast for a while, and then people finally got there and tasted it, and I think if it's done well, people keep coming back year after year, and it seems like you guys know what you're talking about. You kind of experimented with some smaller things over the years, and yeah, we're excited to see what happens, and hopefully it catches, and you see growth year after year.
Yeah, and I like thinking about it in terms of like year two has me way more excited than year one, because with all of the different things that we've been doing with Playcrafting, I'll use the example of our annual awards. We have this big awards showcase at the end of the year that we started in December of 2015. Initially, just a way to show off games and recognize developers in the local community. Year one, it was the first time we ever did it. The fact that it happened and we had a good amount of people that showed up, and the developers were really happy and the press people were happy, was a victory. But then because that was like the learning process, it was a learning process in large part, year two wound up being giant because we had sort of gone through the motions of the making mistakes and learning all throughout. And then year two, we had it at the auditorium at Parsons. We welcomed Ted Price, the founder and CEO of Insomniac, as one of our main honorees. Had more categories. The party was going until like 3 a.m. or something. It was just a really fun event. And so now when I think about new things that we're trying at Playcrafting and with the different developer and gamer communities that we have, I think of year two as being like, personally as like the organizer, way more exciting because we've gone through the motions. But there is a certain excitement around this because it's never happened before. Larger companies that have been getting involved with it, it's a little bit of a leap of faith, I think, for them, because it's not like we've been doing it on the West Coast and there's like video content and statistics I can show. So it's a little bit of a harder sell for those. And what I've been saying with them is, look, it's the first year we're doing it. How can you be involved? How can we make it so, like, give us feedback and help us like plant the seeds now, so we're capturing information and we're putting the seeds into place so that next year we have what you're looking for, and we're able to show the excitement from the event, the developers, the games, et cetera, that showed up. So that's what a lot of those conversations have been, and it's just going to be super fun even for our team to like be at the event, see these months and months and like hundreds of hours of phone calls having paid off, and just have it all happen. So we're super excited about it too.
Cool. Who's the, so you mentioned, different companies and people coming in. You mentioned Insomniac at one of your last events. Who are the ones that are coming that you're particularly excited about? You think other people would be excited to hear that they're going to be there too?
Sure. So the first AAA studio that we had confirmed was actually our first booth, like that officially was locked in at all, and that was Avalanche Studios. They're based here in Manhattan. Was really important, again, for us to make sure we have sort of the main, like the largest tentpole developers that are in the New York area, since it's called Play NYC, and we want to make sure that the local devs are being shown off in some way. Avalanche, that team has made, so there's a studio that they have in Europe, and then they have the studio here. The game that they most recently did was Just Cause 3, a couple years back, and they have, so good. I remember like they were showing me how like you could windsuit like all across the entire map, and like I was like sitting there with their QA testers and just fascinated, because it must have taken them like tens of hours to figure out how to do that. So yeah, that was the first big one that came through. We have a number of like large scale local mobile developers that are coming through, like Dots. We also have Simple Machine, which has done a bunch of very like simple kind of Twitch gameplay mobile games. They had a big success with Pop the Lock, which was like #1 on the App Store for a few weeks in a row. One thing that might be particularly interesting to the Nintendo crowd is a game called Slime Song. which came out on Steam a couple months back. They've been a big part of our community in New York for a while now, and that game is coming to Switch later this summer. So we're super excited about them being there. Again, like having this combination of people that are already a part of the community just come on board and show off their content in a much grander way has been exciting for us. On the speaker side, we confirmed today that the president of the ESRB is going to be there as one of our speakers,
Very nice.
which is really cool. Yeah, we might be doing more with them throughout the event, but again, like I started with connections that we already have and with companies that are already locally based, and ESRB has a big office here in New York, so it made sense to get them involved. A couple of other big names that I think are coming through that we're going to fly in for the event, but I can't reveal them yet. I'll let you guys know down the line when it's there.
I can't give us an exclusive. Come on.
The ESRB one is an exclusive, so
there you go. All right.
I haven't told anybody that yet. So that just came through like 2 hours ago. Her name's Kat Vance. She's the president of that company. Thinking about maybe integrating some cool like ratings, like branding throughout the event as well. So that's going to be really cool. Other than that, like I said, we're at about 40 or 50 booths and kiosks so far, just lining up the speakers. Who else on the speaker side? We do have the New York Video Game Critics Circle. They're going to be doing a panel that's like representing all the biggest sites in gaming, really. So Polygon, Kotaku, Killscreen. They're all on that circle. They're going to be doing a panel for developers at the event. We love this idea of connecting developers to press in the same building as where we're connecting gamers to developers. We have Zach Zinger, who's one of our longtime community members. He has been teaching an audio class with us for a long time now. He was one of the lead audio composers for Street Fighter V. So that was really cool to come in. Yeah. Jason Cantor, who did the audio for Just Cause 3, is going to be one of our audio talks. We have a local sound and I think it's like a sound and effects, another circle with all professionals in that specific field that have worked on popular games. They're going to be doing a panel as well. And one of the guys on that panel did a lot of the work for the past Halo games, especially on the recent anniversary editions of those games. So have some cool stuff coming through. Right now, it's all about getting those booth spaces filled up since there has been a lot of interest. We're announcing new booths weekly. I'd say check out play-nyc.com for daily updates on the convention. Check out playcrafting.com for our regular classes and courses if you want to learn how to become a developer yourself or take part in one of our smaller local events. Just a great way to get involved, meet developers, try games that you know, and meet developers that you might know, as well as a bunch of developers you've never met before that are making games locally. So it's just a really good time, and it's a come one, come all. So we'd love to have you join us.
Yeah, you got me sold. I mean, like, I can just tell, from your excitement, and that's something you can tell. If someone's like, oh yeah, come on down, whatever. Like, you have that passion, and that to me speaks volumes. And it's so good to see the first dedicated game convention to hit New York City have that passion, that drive behind it. I think that's what's needed, especially in Manhattan. But it's just great to see. One thing I would love to see, obviously, on press, so this doesn't totally apply, but like I know, like going to like New York Comic Con, my favorite thing to do is the panels. I love the panels, especially when game developers are there. Like Bandai Namco does usually a panel. Nintendo has done a panel. They did a Zelda panel a couple years back. To me, that's really the meat and the potatoes of that convention. I know you said the panels were for press and for developers, not for the public. The public's going to be playing the games. Maybe next year, is that something you're going to look into? Like, hey, you know what? Let's get some, at least like, the primary seating for press and for developers, but maybe some back seats for, you know, guests that want to come in and that, hey, you know what, I'm just a regular Joe, but this panel actually looks interesting. Oh, I like Just Cause 3, you know, or I like Halo's music, and I'd love to hear what they have to say. Then they can sit in too.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the direction that we want to go. For year one, we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. And one piece of feedback that we've had from developers and press in the past is that, and I think you've heard that a lot with just E3 that just happened last week. When you sort of like mix both crowds, it can kind of dilute everything. So that's like really the issue that we're trying to make sure we're solving in year one. And also, frankly, since it's year one, I don't want to have multiple rooms with multiple tracks and just this whole headache of programming, because I mean, at Playcrafting, we're only 3 full-time employees across the country. So there's only so much we can do. There's a lot more people that are involved with Playcrafting, obviously, but in terms of like actual employees, that's it. So there's a bandwidth piece and also kind of like starting small so we can grow outward. One thing I'd love to offer for the folks that follow NintendoFuse is we'd be happy to maybe put like 10 passes to the panels and talks out there for folks that are interested. So why don't we follow up on that, and we can give that out to some of your followers.
That would be phenomenal. I think everyone would like that. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, no, totally. And we'd love to hear from them, you know, their feedback on the talks and panels. Again, this is completely in the service of the gamers and the developers that are there. We love the full transparency of, you know, this being something we're building together and we want to grow out in the years to come. So any feedback, positive and negative, we love to hear it throughout. Yeah,
wow. I definitely think feedback's important. Hopefully you have those little questionnaires, you know, for everyone, like, hey, what'd you think? You know, give us your feedback. But yeah, no, that would be great. I think I speak for, you know, everyone in the area, you know, that likes to go to these shows. Like, you know, if there's a panel you're interested in, that'd be great to be able to go to it and hear what they have to say. I think just the fact of getting one-on-one time, even with developers, is fantastic enough. To me, I think hearing the stories behind certain games is actually more impressive than the games itself. And there are certain games like that where, like, I don't know if you know the game Dusk: An Ecclesian Tale. You know, it's a phenomenal game, a Metroidvania style game. But then when you find out it was mostly done by one person as a passion project, it's like, whoa, like the game just becomes that much better because of that story behind it.
Yeah.
So and that's exactly what we're all about with Playcrafting, you know, especially when like the awards come around at the end of the year. I'm so glad that like I have a whole panel of people that decide on those, because we are a community-based organization, and we as a team just get so invested in the lives of the developers that are a part of our community that those are the kinds of stories that we know all about all the time, and offering a platform for developers to get those stories out to press and to gamers is extremely important for us, which is part of why we're making this big investment in building out this convention, because we want there to be a place for that kind of thing to happen. And since it's not happening in New York, it needs to be. It's one of the biggest cities in the world. It has this hugely passionate and talented pool of developers and avid and excitable and exciting gamers and enthusiasts. So why not build this? And we are a community of developers and gamers, so we want to build something that we're excited about too, you know?
Yeah, I love the community aspect, and one of the things that I love about being in the gaming press is being able to connect with those developers and hear the stories behind, you know, why'd you make this game, and why do you make games in general, and you know what inspired these different things, and really seeing the stories behind this art form. You know, it's been debated for a long time. Are video games really art? We totally believe they are here at NintendoFuse, and hearing the stories that have inspired that art is so important.
I mean, look at the Game Awards by Jeff Keighley last year. The most talked about thing was that Dragon Cancer. you know,
Right.
which won like independent. And when the guy got up there and he just started crying, like the passion like behind that game, like so many people had never heard of that game before and went out and, well, I got to try this game now, because you can
Right.
tell just at this last E3 when Mario and Rabbids was shown off and Miyamoto actually called on the developer, he had tears in
Yeah.
his eyes. Like that was like his passion. Like, and that was talked about. Like, oh my God, like how could you hate on this game now, especially with that? Like somebody
Right.
loved that game and made it with every ounce of their being. And to get that out there, I think that has really resonated with the gaming community, just the general public, in addition to developers.
Right. And same thing with Michel Ancel from Ubisoft.
Yeah,
I was emotional when like Beyond Good and Evil 2 was announced because,
yeah.
like I said, GameCube is my favorite system of all time, and I definitely played through that game a couple of times, and I've been waiting and dying for that game for years, and you could tell that he has been too. You
Oh,
know?
agreed. The only thing
Yeah.
negative about that is it's a prequel and they left off on that cliffhanger, and we're still waiting
Yeah.
15 years and we're still not going to know what happened to
Yeah.
Paige.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. And plus, on top of that, that was like a cinematic trailer, and the game is probably at least like 2 years out from coming. But
Easily.
at least we got something, you know.
Well, it's interesting to see certain passion projects like Darksiders is another one that looked like it was gonna not get continued, and now Darksiders 3 is finally coming out. Even though none of them have told the story past the first game, we'll see if we
Yeah.
ever get on beyond that.
Totally.
Well, that's great. I mean, first off, you know, I wanted to encourage everybody listening, if you are in the New York area, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, you know, if you're somewhere close, definitely look into Play New York City. Definitely try to make it, you know, the success it deserves to be, because we need that here in the New York metro area. We need gaming conventions. And if you're not, and you're able to come in, or you got family, use it as an excuse. Like, oh, I want to come visit Aunt Joan because I really want to go to play in New York City. Um,
Totally. Bring her along.
yeah, go ahead. You know. So if you are interested in going, you can purchase tickets right now. There is an early bird pricing before July 21st, so you guys have a month or so to pick it up. General admission is $20. So go for that. I don't know what it's going to be after that, but I'm assuming more. So yeah, definitely go and pick up your tickets now. It is August 19th to 20th. It's at Terminal 5. Like we said, the address is 610 West 56th Street. It's along the west side, not too far from the Javits Center, which is really nice. So if you're in that area, please go and support Play New York City. Dan, I'd like to take the moment here just to thank you very much for giving us the time of day and to talk to our listeners and viewers about Play New York City.
Yeah, anytime. I absolutely love talking about games and my job, and the fact that I get to work in games is like, it serves both purposes, and I just love talking about it. So anytime, and it was great talking to you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And of course,
No
thank you,
problem at all.
Steve, for joining on this issue of Industry Talk. And for all your Nintendo news, please go to nintendofuse.com, and we'll see you next time.